Vienna, the city of music. From the Burgtheater to the Volkstheater, back to the boys' choir at Stephansdom, Vienna has long been a mecca for both established and aspiring musicians to come perform. Through this quick musical jaunt through the centuries, we will look at the composers who have given this city the fame it enjoys today. From Haydn through Falco, this is Vienna. Joseph Haydn, born 1732 and living until 1809, was sent to Stephansdom at the age of 8 to study violin and other instruments, and trained there as part of the boys' choir. As he aged, he had to leave the boys' choir and find his own way when his voice dropped, teaching himself theory and working freelance. He would eventually be hired as Kapellmeister for Prince Paul Anton of the Esterházys, and though he worked for the longest stint at Eisenstadt, almost 30 years of his life, he loved Vienna, where he spent most of his time visiting his platonic friend, the married Maria Anna von Genzinger, as well as Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, who Latinized Gottlieb into Amadeus, lived from 1756 to 1791. Considered by many to be one of the greatest composers, Mozart's symphonies and operas, such as the Zauberflöte, are still enjoyed today. Though Haydn was religious and Mozart preferred a life of orgies and scatological humor, the two made fast friends, and Haydn often promoted Mozart to his supporters, and Mozart dedicated 6 quartets to his friend, which are now known as the Haydn Quartets. The Mozarthaus Museum is held at the largest apartment Mozart lived in, also for the longest period, which was at only 2.5 years. He also had an important view from this window up Blutgasse toward the cramped apartment he first held in Vienna. Arnold Schoenberg, born in 1874 and living until 1951, along with the movement of the Second Viennese School, broke off from the norms of musical form and tradition at the same time the modernist poets and artists, such as Egon Schiele, broke off from standard artistic expression of their predecessors. Schoenberg sought at first to expand the typical harmonies of his time and eventually moved beyond standard melody and into atonal music. He is most famous for the advent of the 12-tone scale, a systematic approach to guaranteeing all 12 notes of Western music are touched before the next movement.
Ludwig van Beethoven was born in 1770 and received his musical training from his father. Although he was born and raised in the city of Bonn in Germany, Beethoven moved to Vienna when he was only 17 and composed and lived there until he died in 1827 at the age of 57. Before the age of 12, Beethoven published his first work entitled 9 Variations in C minor for Piano. Once he moved to Vienna, he worked with his contemporaries Wolfgang Mozart and Joseph Haydn. Beethoven started out working under the direction of Haydn and made an effort to master counterpoint, a musical technique of playing melodies in conjunction with one another. Young Beethoven was recognized as a piano virtuoso at the age of 23 and was widely admired by Viennese musicians and financed by aristocrats. Unfortunately, Beethoven was diagnosed with an incurable hearing impairment at the young age of 27. He conducted his last concert when he was 48 and became completely deaf 3 years later. His perseverance as a deaf musician spoke to his love for composing, as he composed Choral Symphony No. 9 when he was almost completely deaf. Beethoven is considered to have been a prominent figure in the transition between classical and romantic eras of music, and is universally commemorated as a salient composer of the early 19th century. Franz Schubert was born in Vienna in 1797 and began studying music with his fathers and brothers early on in his life. He had written more than 100 songs and numerous chamber music scores before he was 20 years old and was hailed as a genius by Antonio Salieri, director of the Chapel of the Imperial Court. In the summer of 1818, he worked as a private music teacher to the Esterhazy family, and then began living a bohemian lifestyle, composing and spending time with a group of friends that acted as his personal support system. Although Schubert was commissioned by several opera houses, his operas were unenthusiastically received. Schubert's music featured at Vienna's Musikverein was, however, critically acclaimed, which provided him with the optimism to continue composing. Schubert greatly admired Beethoven and was asked to be buried next to the legend's grave. His wish was honored in 1828 when he died of syphilis at the remorseful age of 32. Although his music was overlooked during his lifetime, he is considered today to be one of the leaders of the early Romantic era music scene. Johannes Brahms was born in 1833 in Hamburg, Germany, but spent most of his life in Vienna. Brahms is known as a leading musician of the Romantic period and was a master of counterpoint. Brahms was only 6 years old when he created his own method of writing in order to get the melodies he created on paper. Later on in his life, he became close friends with fellow composer Robert Schumann and Schumann's wife Clara. Brahms' largest choral work, a German requiem, garnered much critical acclaim, which in turn confirmed his European reputation and led many to accept that he had conquered Beethoven and the symphony. Brahms' health began rapidly declining when he reached his 50s, but he continued composing a number of acknowledged masterpieces. Brahms died of liver cancer in 1897 at the age of 63, but his legacy lives on through his compositions and is considered one of the greatest musicians of the Romantic period.
Johann Strauss I, better known as Strauss Sr. in relation to his composer son Johann Strauss II, was a Romantic Viennese composer famous for his contribution to the development of the Viennese waltz. Strauss Sr. was born in 1804, the son of an innkeeper. The location of his father's inn at the Danube Channel and the neighboring harbor with its rafts and boats from different countries and the music played by the sailors there all influenced Johann Sr.'s enthusiasm for popular dance music. In order to pay homage to Strauss Sr., we visited his grave in the Zentralfriedhof cemetery in Vienna. His most famous piece, the Radetzky March, was composed in 1848 in dedication to the Austrian Field Marshal Joseph Radetzky von Radetz. Strauss was commissioned to write this piece for a celebration of Radetzky's victory at the Battle of Custoza in July 1848, in which Austrian troops squashed an uprising of Italians demanding independence and an end to Austrian occupation. Hector Berlioz, a famous Romantic composer and contemporary of Strauss Sr., commented that Vienna without Strauss is like Austria without the Danube. Johann Strauss II, the first son of Strauss Sr., was born in Vienna in 1825. From a young age, his father forbid him the study of music and attempted to trample his aspirations of a musical career, urging him to take up banking as an occupation instead. However, Strauss Jr. cared more for his violin lessons than his schoolwork. He was successful and talented from early on, and soon rose to be the most dangerous competitor to his father. This father-son rivalry escalated during the bourgeois revolution of 1848, when Strauss Jr., supporting the revolutionaries, publicly played La Marseillaise in opposition to his father, who, in support of the monarchy, composed the Radetzky March. Strauss Jr. was admired by many composers, including Johannes Brahms, and eventually became known as the Waltz King. He's famous for such pieces as Kaiser Waltzer and Tales from the Vienna Woods, but is most well known for his work, The Blue Danube. Born in 1957 in Vienna, Johann Hans Holzel became a world-renowned pop and rock musician under the stage name Falco. He was in many different bands from a young age, but eventually decided to start a solo career. His first album in 1982, Einzelhaft, was an instant bestseller. His musical style was unique in Austria, and he managed to combine German lyrics with the rise of rap music in America. Falco always paid close attention to his lyrics and was greatly inspired by avant poetry writer Ernst Jandl. His worldwide breakthrough came with his third album, Falco 3, in 1985. This album included the single Rock Me Amadeus, which became a #1 hit in Austria, Germany, the UK, and the US, and rose to the top of the Billboard charts. This album made him the best-selling Austrian singer of all time, reaching sales of 20 million albums and 15 million singles. In an attempt to pay homage to this radical Austrian musician, we planned to visit his grave in the Zentralfriedhof in Vienna, but instead, and by accident, we ended up visiting his shrine in a nearby beer garden.
Banken gegen ihn. Woher die Schulden kamen, war wohl jedermann bekannt. Er war ein Mann der Frauen, Frauen liebten seinen Punk. Er war ein Superstar, er war so populär, er war zu exaltiert, genau das war sein Flair. Er war ein Virtuose, war ein Rocky-Doll und alle suchten noch heute Captain Rock Me Amadeus. Come on, rock me